Mark Sanchez News, and if you like somebody tackling Latino issues that you're not going to hear about anywhere else, man, you're in the right place. And here's one. Have you ever wondered why it is that the Latino community in the United States is leaderless? Literally, leaderless. It is. Has been essentially for the longest time, ever since a little guy named Cesar Chavez with a really big heart was around. Now, why is that? Why is it that since Cesar Chavez, there has not been a real leader in the Latino community in the United States? Is it because perhaps, Latinos, they don't want to be led? That's a good question. Not too long ago, the Urban League conducted a study, and they asked Latinos living in the United States how important it was for them to have a national leader. Do you know what the answer was? An overwhelming C. Yes. In fact, not just a yes, but rather what appears to me when I look at the statistics in this study that the Urban League put out, it looks more like a fuck yes. We want a leader. Yes. 43% of Latinos and Latinas said it wasn't just important for them to have a leader. It was extremely important for Latinos to have a national leader. Another 23% said, no, it wasn't just important. It was very important. So, those are the numbers. By far, overwhelmingly, Latinos say, boy, they sure would like somebody to be able to speak for them or carry their cause for them. By the way, this is interesting too. You're going to like this. Non-Latinos, when they were asked the very same question, they said they don't think it's important for Latinos to have leadership. I wonder why, right? If you've been watching or listening to our podcasts, you know what we've talked about in the past. There seems to be a reckoning, if you will. There seems to be something going on where people would prefer that Latinos are not powerful, not united, not even around, really. Now, here's something I think that you may have probably already figured out about me. I love being a Latino. I fight for Latinos, mi gente, right? Mis vatos, right? I really think that we, Latinos in the United States right now, we're the shit. We are. And maybe most people just don't know it, including ourselves, but we are. We are America's labor force. You know how important that is? And by the way, that's undeniable. We are the labor force of the United States of America. We start more businesses. We create more jobs. And by the way, you know what else we do? I think this is cool. We like to hug. We like to hug and we like to kiss by far more than just about anybody who's ever lived in this country. You see two Latinos out there, they meet each other. I don't care if one of them is a Mexican dude and the other guy's the Mexican dude from the Valley, a Puerto Rican woman from the Bronx, a Colombian from Chicago, or a Honduran dude from East LA. What do? They hug. If it's a man and a woman or two women, there's even an obligatory besito, right? We don't shake hands. We hug and we kiss. And that makes non-Latinos look at us like, okay, that's kind of cool. Wow, these guys really like each other. They're like tight. Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. As a matter of fact, that's a big part of who we are. It's like a kinship. Put another way, it's like a club. And you know you belong to that club because you got a special handshake. And the handshake looks something like this, right? There it is. El abrazo, the hug, the kiss, the comfort. So yeah, it's a unique club. And it's also huge. Huge. We are without question the largest cohort right now in the United States. Nobody even comes close. We're already a fifth of the population, and soon we're going to be a fourth of the population. And for all of that, you know what's still missing? There's a noticeable absence, says the Urban League and every study that's been done, a noticeable absence of prominent leadership capable of mobilizing Latinos and making their case nationally. And boy, if there's ever been a time for someone to come along and make our case nationally, given what's being said about us by certain people. It's pretty sad when the closest thing that we have to a leader in this country is this.
Hola! Vámonos, amigos.
Vámonos, amigos. She is the bomb, by the way. I got to tell you. Who doesn't love Dora? La Bomba. If only she wasn't a cartoon, we could really then bottle her and make it work. But she is, as we like to say in Spanish, una muñequita. Let's talk about other groups. Do they have this problem? No, they don't. In fact, there are obvious leaders in all types of movements, all types of communities in the United States. Ellen, for example, for all her issues more recently, give her credit. She led the LGBT movement into the 21st century. She got people, well, most people, to think that gay is cool. And she did it, by the way, by stealing one of our things, right? Because what do? We hug, we kiss, and we dance. Good for Ellen, right? She did what she had to do. By the way, on the other side, there's the other movement, the get off my lawn movement, right? You know that crowd. Those are the angry white Americans who didn't even know what to be really angry about until their leader came along and showed them that they just needed to hate all kinds of shit because whatever they feel, whatever they fail at, for example, the fact that they can't get a job or that they're drinking too much beer or that their son is doing crack, whose fault is that? Who's to blame? Well, of course, it's the Mexicans' fault. The quote, blacks as well. Throw in some Jews, the Muslims, the liberals, and of course, as Rush will tell you, women.
This is what we have done to boys and men. The feminists, the feminazis have been working for years to this end. Advance women by diminishing men.
Damn those feminazis. Wow. God bless him. May he rest in peace. In fact, Limbaugh showed there was no such thing as nothing you wouldn't say to be able to make money. Making money by making white Anglo-Europeans angry. He started a cottage industry filled with now copycats. In fact, here's a sampling of his followers.
Yeah, you're not surprised. It's always the same people, isn't it? Those white Republican men.
Liberal ideology had become a liberal theology.
I have a message for those guys. All lives matter.
The vast majority of our population growth is solely people coming here from foreign countries. And as you mentioned, you cannot have social cohesion that way.
Yes, and by foreign countries, by the way, let's not kid ourselves, okay? We know what he's talking about. You know what they mean. Mexicans and other Latinos. That's what he means by foreign countries. And he's not talking about the people who are coming. He wants the people who are already here, who maybe have been here for the last 600 years, to get the hell out. Because we don't like those Sanchez's and them Rodriguez's, you know. We don't want you here. We don't like your kind, says Baldy. Because that, by the way, is their sweet spot. Do you think they give a shit about the Canadian border? No, they only point to one border over and over and over again. Now, is that healthy? No. Are they taking advantage of people, misinforming them, exploiting them? Yes, and of course. But for their followers, the guys looking for red meat, it doesn't matter. As long as they feel their fears filled, by the way, key word there, fears, and that they're being addressed, that's all they want. And there's a lot of money to be made in this cottage industry. I mean, that's the cat's meow right there. African Americans, same, about 12% of the population, but they have a bevy of leaders, both historically and in the present, most of whom are extremely impressive, by the way. I mean, look at this list. Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., Jesse Jackson, Barack Obama. I mean, talk about taking it to the top, right? And we can't leave out my old friend Al Sharpton. How many times have I interviewed him when I was on CNN and other places nationally? You got to love him or hate him, but this guy is unquestionably very good at what he does. Al's good at what he does. Or as they call him on MSNBC, the Rev. Now, if you're African American and you need defending, as far as I can tell, look, I mean, he will be there for you.
Police racism police brutality and police illegality.
There you go. Yeah, he's loud. I mean, so you can tell, right? But he's proud, right? He's loud and he's proud. And if the shoe doesn't fit, you must acquit. All right, that's another guy. But rhyming is cool, right? It really is cool. And if the other guy hadn't thought of that, then I guarantee you that Al Sharpton would have thought of it. He may even have given it to him. I kind of like Al. He's hard not to like. Oftentimes, Sharpton even goes out of his way to defend Latino causes. I've seen him do it, which, by the way, is appreciated. Who doesn't appreciate when somebody sticks up for you? But is that what we want? I mean, if you're Latino, I'm a Latino. Do we want to piggyback off of Al Sharpton? Do we want to piggyback off of Al Sharpton? I don't think so. Call me crazy, but I think we should do our own damn bidding. I think we should do our own thing. We should be the leaders of our own cause. However, here's the question. Who's going to do that, right? Who's going to do that? Is it this guy? There he is, Cancun Teddy. The only people who dislike this guy more than Democrats are members of his own party, Republicans. They can't stand him, they say. And by the way, ideologically, he's about as Latino as I am a white nationalist. And trust me, I'm no white nationalist. And then there's this about Cruz. When Donald Trump calls your wife ugly on national television, man, I got to ask you, first of all, why would anybody call anybody's wife ugly on national television? But, hey, Donald Trump did it. And then he goes further. He doubles down. He calls your father, he calls Ted Cruz's father an assassin. So he calls your wife ugly. He calls your father a murderer and an assassin. And what do? You go out and campaign for him. Yes, Donnie, whatever you need. That's our boy Ted. By the way, what does that say about him? Is that a leadership quality? Is that who we want as a leader? It says to me that he covets angry, white Donald Trump followers more than he cares about, I'm sorry, but I got to say it, more than he cares about respecting his wife or his dad or us. Tell me I'm wrong. Go ahead. Write me a comment. By the way, look at what he said about the attack on the Capitol.
We saw a terrorist attack on the United States Capitol. It was despicable. It was an assault on the citadel of democracy. And every one of those violent criminals who attacked the Capitol, they should be fully prosecuted. And they should spend a long, long time in jail.
See, you hear him? It was despicable. He can't believe those people did that. Those people are awful, and they should all go to jail for what they did. But then he gets a call from Fox News. And he has to appear on Fox News. And, of course, he's going to stick to his guns, right? He's going to say, no, I'm a man of my word. This is what I said, and this is what I meant. And he's going to tell them, yes, I said that. And those people who attacked the Capitol, our Capitol, they were wrong. And that was a horrible act, right? That's what he's going to do. That's what he's going to say, right? That's what he's going to say. And that's exactly what he's going to do, right?
You told that lie on purpose, and I'm wondering why you did.
The way I phrased things yesterday, it was sloppy, and it was frankly dumb.
Can you believe this? Somebody insulted his wife, and he's okay with it. They call his dad an assassin, and he's okay with it. He says the people who attacked the Capitol were despicable, and then he's asked about it. He said, oops, I didn't mean to say that. Oops, I didn't mean to say that? I meant to say they were really great Americans. I mean, all in a 24-hour time span, by the way. Here's another one, Marco Rubio. I mean, Marco Rubio, leader of the Latino community in the United States, looks good on paper, right? And look, here he is taking on Donald Trump.
If he builds the wall the way he built Trump Towers, he'll be using illegal immigrant labor to do it. The second...
By the way, we prefer to say undocumented, but that's just our thing, right? Since then, he's been in lockstep with President Trump on everything that President Trump has done. And yes, look, I got to tell you, this guy appears youthful. He appears eloquent. But then there's the mero mero thing, the mero mero thing. You know what it is. The backbone, right? Let's see. He pushed for immigration reform until he felt some opposition against it. So he quit immigration reform. Okay. And then he pushed for gun control until he felt some pushback on immigration reform and that it might hurt him politically, so he quit. You see a pattern? You see a pattern? I'll tell you somebody who doesn't back down who maybe we should consider. AOC.
This is not an elitist issue. This is a quality of life issue. You want to tell people that their concern and their desire for clean air and clean water is elitist? Tell that to the kids in the South Bronx, which are suffering from the highest rates of childhood asthma in the country. Tell that to the families in Flint, whose kids have their blood is ascending in lead levels. Their brains are damaged for the rest of their lives. Call them elitist.
Yeah, call them elitist. You know what? She's young. She's smart. She certainly has the mero. Talk about somebody who doesn't back down. But does she fight for Latinas and Latinos? Does she really fight for Latinas and Latinos? I mean, is that her, her norte? No, not as far as we can tell. I mean, if you're trans, if you're gay, if you're poor, if you're abused by the system, if you're African American, if you're taking on corrupt or abusive police departments, she's there for you. If you're a Muslim activist trying to be heard on the question of injustice, she's going to be there for you. And you know what? That's admirable. I say good for her. She's always fighting for the little guy. She's always fighting for the little guy and the little gal. And that's God's work. But does she understand Latinas and Latinos? Are we her norte, her north? She really understands us. Does she have any time left after saving the world to represent Latinos specifically? To be honest with you, and to be fair to her, I'm not sure she wants that gig. I'm not sure she wants that gig, which is cool. By the way, that gig is not easy. This is not an easy gig. There's an old saying in the Latino community that we are all like a barrel filled with crabs. And as soon as one of us, climbs its way to the very top, the rest start pulling that guy down in order to pull themselves up. Let me tell you a personal story, my experience about how that works. So when I was at CNN, as the only Latino news person with his own show, I was even on prime time. But when I was there, it happened to coincide with, suddenly it became fashionable to go after Mexicans. And they were pouring it on, a lot of different people. One of the most famous guys at the time was this dude named Sheriff Joe Arpaio of Arizona. And he was doing this on a regular basis, just beating the crap out of Latinos, arresting them, just because, as he once told me on camera, while I interviewed him on CNN, because they look to me like they're Mexican. He freaking told me that. He told me he arrested people because he could tell they look Mexican. What the hell does that even mean? But he said that to me. So I stuck my neck out on CNN and I went after this guy, right? I went after him for saying and doing some just absolutely god-awful things to and about Latinos, and Mexicans in particular, right? But he wasn't alone. There were a lot of people making money at the time by bashing Latinos. So there was a guy on CNN at the time who was doing the same thing. You probably know him. His name is Lou Dobbs. And he would regularly on his show single out Latino immigrants, and he would attack them, and he would describe them as a scourge on America, that we're bringing in diseases, and that we were all inferior. And of course, he was doing great ratings with this. In fact, the highest ratings on the network at the time. But you know what? I didn't give a shit about his ratings. I felt like he was insulting me. And I was the only guy at CNN who was Latino and was feeling that insult. Nobody else gave a shit. But he was insulting me. Worse, you know what? He was insulting my mom. He was insulting my dad, and maybe your mom and dad, and anybody else who's come to this country who didn't come to steal and who didn't bring diseases like he said that we were saying, that we were bringing. So I criticized him. I went after him on my show Rick's List. Well, that didn't go over so well at CNN. But I did it anyway. I knew that the National Association of Latino Journalists, was an annual conference where all the Latino journalists get together. It was going to be just around the corner. And I thought for sure that my vatos, right, all the other Latino journalists out there would be cheering me on and saying, good for him. Good for you, Sanchez. Good for you, Rick. Maybe they'd even give me a speaking role at the event so I can, explain, what I was trying to do. You know what they did? They invited Lou Dobbs as the keynote speaker that year. Lou Dobbs, the guy who was saying horrible things about Mexicans and Latinos, he was the keynote speaker. I was there. I sat in the second row and just went, what the fuck? Lou fucking Dobbs, the same guy who was attacking us. I later found out why Lou Dobbs was chosen as the keynote speaker. You want to know why? CNN wrote them, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, a really big check. Word has it, it was a check for more than $100,000. A lot of money back then. Hell, a lot of money now. How's that for a crab crawl? And with friends like that, who needs an enemy, right?
I'm writing on a show called East Los High, and it's a Hulu show, and it's getting huge numbers.
So it just goes to tell you the power of the web and also the power of the Latino audience.
But it's a huge market. There's 53 million Latinos, $2 trillion in buying power. It's amazing.
Fireball.
What I do is I knock on the trunk of the car. Now this works for Mexicans cannot resist this. You knock on the trunk of the car, you go, Que viva Mexico! Viva, viva, viva!
Talk about a Latino who's been around and has done so many things. What, a comedian, a producer, actor. He's been a director. He's written a book. By the way, the book is cool. Ignite the Fire Within, Master Your Speaking and Your Writing. So talking about leadership here, I think Rick knows a little bit about this. By the way, I can't help but start by asking you about your name, Rick. Rick Najera. Now, I'm a Rick too. I started off as a Ricardo. And Ricardo, then mine became Rick, but you were born Rick, right?
I was born Rick. My parents actually on my birth certificate said Rick Najera, and everyone questions it. It's like, they'll be like, are you sure it's not Ricardo? I mean, come on, is it Ricardo? And I'm like, why would I keep my last name, Najera, which sounds like an Arabic war cry, then I would change it to Rick Rivers or something like that. If you're really going to hide, I was like, that's my name, Rick Najera.
Yeah.
So,
and it's funny because there's two pronunciations for Najera. It's Najera or Najera. I mean, the funny thing about being Latino is we have this thing called accents. Gringos know nothing about accents. We're the only ones who know accents. So like mine is Sanchez. And it does bother me a little bit when people call me Sanchez because that's not my name.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well, when we crossed the border in 1910 from Chihuahua to New Mexico, first of all, New Mexico wasn't even a state, it was a territory. They didn't have that little accent mark in their typewriter. So basically we had no accent. Then later on you go, it was an accent. But it turns into a Spanish lesson every time I have to tell my name to someone, because they'll be like, I just want to get it right. Let me get it right. Is it Najera or is it Najera? It's like, good. Najera makes me Japanese. It's Najera. So it's one of the fun things about Latino. We change our name like every few years. We're Hispanic, Chicano, Latino, Latinx.
It depends on who you're talking to.
We just keep changing our brand.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I introduce myself as Ricardo Leon Sanchez de Reynaldo.
Yeah.
And that's not my name, but it sounds...
Lorenzo de Valle. I can add all those names too. But I'm not really going for Spanish royalty. That's not the look or the sound of me. But, my job as a writer is to explain my culture, and I think that's one of our unique things of being not in the so-called mainstream culture, but we have to be translators for people and explain ourselves. I mean, how many times did I write a TV show where they said, Rick, just show me the pain of the barrio. Show me the pain of the barrio. And I go, look, barrio means neighborhood, like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood.
Right.
But there's no pain in it. It's pain when you leave the barrio.
There is, you just reminded me of something in our culture. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking a word that they believe means something because of the American culture actually means the same thing in the Latino culture. And I'll give you an example, machismo. Machismo has come to mean in the United States an asshole, right? Machismo is an asshole. He's a guy who basically is just a jerk.
But
right?
not in the Latino culture.
No, machismo. I mean, if you're a little boy and your mom and dad says, "Tiene que ser un buen macho," that means it's a good thing.
You could say it's a quality within the male personality, and that is, something fell down. Okay, so it's quality with the male personality, but it's not a bad thing. A macho could mean someone who's a good provider. He provides well for his family. He looks after his family. He protects his family. All these great things. They've taken a word that necessarily wasn't bad for us and made it bad. As they're saying, wow, she's really feminine. Are you saying the quality of femininity is bad?
Right.
What does that mean? Many times you would say compassionate. You would say caring. You would say certain things like that. And we're not scared of gender. Like in Latino culture, even that word Latinx is almost taking us and making us genderless. We understand there's a male and female to all of us, and some more and some less. But
I want them to take Latinx and stick it up their ass. I am so pissed off about that, and I have not yet.
Yeah, you can look at it and go.
Listen, if you are the one Latino who comes on this show and is okay with Latinx, congratulations, because that would make you the very first person ever who's come on the Rick Sanchez show and defended it. I can't stand it. It's an insult to me, to my heritage, to my grandparents.
It's like how many times Coca-Cola has not changed their name in probably 100 years. No one goes, it says something about us that we can't even agree on what we're called, because it's not us calling us, it's someone else labeling us. And anytime a label it's a very you have a very small parameter you can fit in a label. And the truth is we're a very complex human culture and beings that we don't fit into labels easily. That's the problem. That people kind of go, Latinos are this way, and the truth is there are certain things that link us. I would say, I'm Mexican, you're Cuban, family, hardworking, all these things. You go contributing to society. We're a we people, not a me people.
The Urban League just did a study, as I referenced earlier in this podcast, where they asked Latinos whether they thought it was important for our community to have a leader. We haven't had a leader since Cesar Chavez. We haven't. I mean, the closest thing we've had to a leader so far has been Dora. Seriously.
Dora. I'm honored committee for nominating for president. I think she's going to do a wonderful job. It's the first time as a Latina. It's great. I
swipe
think,
or swipe, dale amigos. Yes,
that's right.
Vote for me for president. How do you say president?
She's basically the citizen patrol. Swipe or swipe. She's against that little robber guy. She's watching the neighborhood. She's like a Latina Karen.
But in this study, Rick, they asked Latinos. The vast majority of Latinos said yes, overwhelmingly. We want a leader. And then they asked non-Latinos, do Latinos need a leader? And the vast majority said no, they don't need a leader. So they think we're all different. They don't want us to be led. I guess I would feel the same way if 20% of the population was also the economically the most viable part of my country. I maybe would be a little bit afraid or intimidated by them. Do you think that's what's going on?
The intimidation of Latinos or the so-called we've always needed a publicist. That's what our people need. We need a publicist, like a crisis management publicist that walks in and goes, wait a minute, let's talk about any situation and say, hey, Latinos are normally, and like I say this in my show, Latino Thought Makers, Latinos are the solution. They're never the problem.
Yes.
That's all you have to think of. You go, look, they're the solution. I go, okay, how well you educate us will decide your tax bracket. It's going to decide who's looking after you and your Social Security. They talk about undocumented people and how dangerous it is. Those undocumented people don't get their Social Security back. In other words, they pay in, they never pull out. So it's a great deal. You're having people actually work, pay into Social Security, and not reap the benefits.
If you're a redneck in Alabama and you're planning to retire in the next couple of years, it is an illegal immigrant, as you call them. We tend to use the term undocumented. But it is an illegal immigrant, as the people of Alabama would call them, who is furnishing you with your retirement. Because they worked sometimes for 5 to 10 years without ever getting any of that money back, but they were putting it into the Social Security system. Right?
Yeah, it's a great deal. So it's like we're easy to bash. We can sit there and say something bad about Latinos, and half the people will agree or tacitly agree by not defending Latinos.
Yeah.
It's like the solution for this country is a young demographic, and we are a young demographic. I look at that.
The common age here, just to support you on that, and I'm sure you probably already know this. Pew did a study. The common age, which is not the average, by the way, it's more like what's called a mode. The common age of a Latino in America right now is 11. The common age of a white Anglo-Saxon European is 58. 11, 58.
Oh.
Did I just make your argument?
I see it. You know, it's like, look, the bad bet is that 58-year-old. I hate to say it. Who's going to keep continuing?
Sorry, Fox News loves them though, baby.
They love them.
Fox News has them every night, 58 to 88, baby. They're right there watching, and you know what they want to hear? That those Rick Najeras and those Rick Sanchez's, we're going to get them to hail out of this country, because you know what? Before we know it, our daughters are going to get raped.
Yeah, well, you know, I did marry an Anglo woman, so
me too.
I called it, you know, hey, so what can I say? My kids are Mexicans. First of all, you can't look at Latinos and go, understand, we travel. Look at Desi Arnaz.
Yeah.
You know, Desi Arnaz had, you know, married Lucy. That's part of it. Most races and cultures, whatever you want to call us, want to marry someone exotic. It's very much in us because it's the difference. It's unique. And I think it's almost genetically put in us, because you're not going to marry your sister. You're not going to marry people that look like you. I hate to say it. My wife's a wonderful woman. I met her on the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. She was one of the leaders. I didn't know she was I thought she was Latina. Her last name was Albin. So I was like, oh, that sounds Spanish. Okay. And she's blonde, but I go, oh, that's still Spanish. That's all right. Yeah. Then I found out she wasn't, you know, big surprise. But we are culturally very similar. She grew up middle class. You know, my family's middle class. So we had a lot in common. Where I grew up, La Mesa, California, there was 2 other Latino families. One was a guy that lived down the street from me on a chicken ranch. And there was another woman who lived up the street from me, a Latina family. That guy is now Juan Vargas. He's a congressman in Congress. The woman up the street from me is Elena Ochoa, the first Mexican-American astronaut.
Wow.
And me. Were the first Mexican-American who wrote and starred a play on Broadway. These are 3 Latinos literally blocks away from each other in a predominantly very white neighborhood.
I still think the 3 of you should be deported.
Yeah, I don't blame you, because look what we're doing, causing all sorts of trouble. We're paying taxes. We're increasing, you know, my kids are not pure white. They're Mexicans. They're half, you know, and they speak beautiful Spanish, and they go to great schools and all these other things. We contribute to the nation. That's what we do. My uncle died in World War II fighting for America. He was killed in a Japanese POW camp. They put him in a pit. They lit him on fire.
Here's the thing, Rick, that bothers me about this conversation that you and I are having right now. And a lot of people say this, hey, guys, you know, it's okay. Right now, it's you guys, the Latinos, who are taking the heat. But if you go back in time, you'll find signs in New York City that said Irish need not apply. They said the same things about Italians. They said the same things about the Jews. Hell, I mean, it was during the Revolutionary War times in the 1990s that some of our leaders and forefathers were telling the Germans to get out because they were Germanizing America, as I'm sure you've read. But here's what I come back with. Yeah, you're right. You know, we shouldn't take it so we shouldn't be offended by the fact that people want us out because they've said this about other groups. Here's the problem that those people don't understand. We've been here for 600 years. We've been here before the Pilgrims arrived. They were celebrating a Thanksgiving in St. Augustine. And then, by the way, another one in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So
my family's New Mexican.
When do we get to say, okay, can we pick on the next group now?
I think when we say it, here's the thing: we can't wait for permission. We can't wait for the bigger thing, because I travel around. I my show Latino Thought Makers. I get to interview the greatest Latinos out there, basically, and then just to show that we're the solution, never the problem. Latinos, we come in every size, shape, and color. You know, we're easy to blend in with America. There's a lot of people. How many times did people look at me and go, you know, they'll say something derogatory about a Mexican and go, whoa, wait a minute, I'm Mexican. Oh, it turns into this, well, you're not one of those Mexicans.
What the hell does that mean?
Well, it's like, actually, I am one of those Mexicans. My father was a sheet metal worker. He went to Vietnam for overtime. That's the kind of Mexican work ethic he had.
Right.
My mother was a waitress. I go, we come from very ordinary people that happen to do extraordinary things.
Yeah.
And that's the way you have to kind of look at it, is say celebrate yourself. I tell Latinos that, I go, I have one very simple rule. I will not attack a Latino publicly, even if I disagree. And believe me, there's plenty of Latinos I disagree with, because I look at it and I say the greater good is to spark dialogue between us all. We're much stronger together than apart.
But but Nick, here, Rick, we still have to at some point get the broader community to not treat us as if we're 1% of the population when we're 20% of the population. I can show you numbers right now. I mean, look, think about it. I was the first guy to be a top newscaster, have his own show in prime time on CNN, right? Rick's List on CNN. And they fired me, which is cool. They got a right to fire me. It's their company, not mine. But here's what pisses me off. Since they fired me, they haven't replaced me. To this day, there is not a single Latino essentially in prime time on any fucking network.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you about?
It tells you they don't want us. They have never wanted us. They never will want us. We are seen as a threat. Now, I would rather know that. I'd rather meet a full-on racist than a closeted racist. That's or someone who just goes, hey, it's just not your time.
So if you had to choose between Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity, you'll pick Sean Hannity. At least he tells you he can't stand you.
I appreciate that. To me, it's like what's the scary part that's happening now in America is they're not wearing KKK robes.
Right.
They're wearing khaki pants. They're wearing khaki pants, and they're saying to you, I'm a patriot. I'm an American. You're not.
Yeah, but here's the difference. Let's talk about this, because I think this is a really important conversation, and only we realize this as Latinos. The left essentially kowtows to us, placates us, whatever word you want to use, where they kind of make us think that they're bringing us into the fold, but they're not. They're not. You only get to appear on CNN if you're Latino, if they're talking about Puerto Rican independence, Hispanic Heritage Month, or Cinco de Mayo, which they don't even know what the hell Cinco de Mayo is. But that's when we get invited to the show. When they talk about serious shit, when they talk about Ukraine or inflation or any other things that are going on, they don't invite us. They don't even invite us to talk about immigration. I mean, and those are the good guys. Those are the guys that we are watching, which is the reason we started Agua Media and this show, because we have no outlet, so we have to start our own damn outlet. Now, if you go to Fox News, they just go ahead and say that if we leave the borders open and those Mexicans come over here, you got to watch your daughter because she's going to get raped. So which do you choose? Which do you choose?
Well, you can look at it and go, I don't think the left understands us. I've never felt that way. And believe me, I'm most people by all rights would look at me as very progressive and
me too.
Left.
Me too.
Left. But I also don't believe there's a difference. There's a right wing that will take us and use us. If you agree with their policy, and they'll say, look, we got a good one. We got a good one. Look at him. He believes in what we believe. He's got good American values. They prefer us, to come back in body bags and say, look what those people did. They're such patriotic, how they've died for this country. They're not willing to lose their rights. In other words, they feel that when we get more rights, we're taking more rights than them. That's not true. That's a way of thinking that is really called scarcity mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, if we give the Latinos some rights here, that's taking our rights. What has happened to us? They're fearful that, oh my God, if they get, if they start trying to work on inequities and problems, they're taking from me. They're not. I hate to say it. I went through the 92 rights, and I remember hearing that no justice, no peace. And I thought about it to a deep degree. Because I did go through the 92 riots. I actually got attacked because I thought I was white. It was a group of black kids and some Mexicans coming toward me. And I thought, wow, blacks and Mexicans together. That makes me so happy. Until they attacked me. But the point was.
They didn't know what the hell you were. All they know is,
I'm Najera. Listen, Najera.
Well, I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to give you an example of something that is so obvious, and I don't understand why people don't see this, right? So for the last, I'd say, 30 years, we have been getting all of our stuff from China and Vietnam. So Vietnam essentially makes all the stuff that we get in the United States, no matter what it is, right? And China also makes it. And they put it on some barge, and then it gets shipped from over there, goes around Africa. The Horn of Africa comes over here. Takes months and months. And finally, at the port of L.A., it gets shipped. Then they put it on a large container. Then that large container gets picked up, and it gets sent to, I don't know, Utah, Salt Lake City. It ends up into Chicago, and finally it gets to Atlanta. So this process is long as hell to begin with. And then recently, with the supply chain problems, it became even more long, and that's why we now have inflation, which is why the Fed is raising the rates, which is why we're looking at a possible recession. We have by far the greatest labor force possibly in the history of the world right here in the United States.
Yeah, no,
they're Latinos, and instead we're saying we don't want them. Get the fuck out. We don't need you here, and we're sending our shit to Vietnam. I mean, can you say stupid?
I could say two things to that. One is education. Vietnam is ranked, I think, 11th in education in the world. Before, it was really way down. Same as Singapore. Singapore was almost 20 years ago, 99% illiterate.
Right.
Now it's less than 1% illiterate. These are countries that have invested heavily in education. And look where they're coming at. Now, I look at this, and you know the Marshall Plan in Europe to rebuild Europe. Why don't we have the Marshall Plan in Central America, South America, and Mexico? Rebuild that, because our biggest trading partners for Mexico, bigger than for America, bigger than France and Germany combined, is Mexico. That's what we're doing. We're actually, people in Mexico are sending money back to people in Mexico and buying American goods. They're our trading partner. It's not France. It's not Germany. It's not England. It's Mexico. So if we keep continuing this mentality of that our neighbor is our enemy, and doing things like what's happening in America now, where there's some people are really rooting for Russia, that's not the America I remember. It sure wasn't the Reagan America. And you're looking at this going, what has happened to our nation? Lack of education, big problem. No vocational programs of note in most of our schools. So that means a Latino can go a vocational program in Germany and be a BMW engineer and make about $150,000 a year when he gets out of school. We have nothing like that. There's a lot of problems that we have, that what we've done as Americans is we've said they're the problem instead of, wait a minute, maybe we're the problem. Maybe we
in
need
actuality, what I am constantly hearing, and maybe you can address this in particular, is the fact that we hear that Latinos in the United States, Mexicans in particular, are on welfare. They're getting everything for free. Everything that comes their way, they get for free, and they don't pay for anything.
I hate to say it, when you look at people saying, I've never seen a Mexican out there who will work for free sign in his hands. They're too busy working. That's really the case.
Do you know the average Latino in the United States has 2 jobs, and that's by far more than just about any other cohort?
Yeah.
The average white European American has less than 1 job.
The biggest creators of small businesses are Latinos.
No question.
That's the big, and actually the majority are women, Latinas.
Yes.
So I look at that and I say, and let me tell you this, Uvalde, who was the one person who went into that school to get their kids? A undocumented Latina who works in the fields.
Why?
You don't.
What does that say? What does that tell you?
Well, it tells you that, first of all, our people are the solution, never the problem. And we're here in America. We're not going anywhere. We're only going to expand America. And guess what? It's a great future. When I hear people say, oh, my God, there's going to be a taco truck on every corner, I say that sounds delicious. They're not worried about a Starbucks in every corner. They're worried about a taco truck on every corner.
Do you like tongue tacos? You ever had a tongue taco?
Lengua, yes. I'm Mexican. We eat everything but the moo. Yes, I've definitely had tongue tacos. The brain.
I got to tell you. No, but I got to tell you, I mean, they're hard to find, by the way. I mean, they're usually in the smaller places. When you go to the bigger restaurants, they don't have lengua. Pero man, if you've never had a lengua taco, it's, to me, the best tasting taco I've ever had.
Oh yeah, it's amazing because like I've had our food is exotic, but it's delicious. I mean, we brought tomatoes, chili to to European culture and all that. What we've done. There's a thing called wheat lacoche, which is a Mexican corn smut. That's the best way you can say it. It's basically the fungi that grows on a corn. It is like caviar. It is one of the best things I've ever eaten.
Really? I didn't. What is it called?
Amazing.
What do you call it?
Wheat lacoche. Wheat lacoche. It's an Aztec delicacy that has been, delivered to us as Mexicans.
Do you get high from it?
No, you don't get high. I at least I didn't. I got high with flavor. That's all I got high with. Yeah. We have other things that make you high, unfortunately, but not wheat la coche. But it's delicious. So yeah, our food is brilliant and exotic, and the best chefs right now in the world. I mean, I know celebrity chef Flor Franco, amazing, chef coming out of the Valle de Guadalupe, which is basically the Napa Valley of Mexico, 30 miles, almost an hour away from San Diego, is another Napa Valley that is beautiful, safe, excellent. And that's what I kind of look at as I see that. And I say, if you step away from the fear and all the stuff that's been told you, how, oh my God, I'm going to go to Mexico, and all these things are happening, you're going to find probably one of the best vacations within a two-hour flight.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Cabo is amazing. What they've done with Cabo San Lucas and how they've created this tourism there. It is one of the most beautiful areas in Mexico.
The only thing dangerous there is what's in the water. So, you could say the same thing about Miami.
Oh, what about amoebas in America? I get terrified. I think of the lakes out there with the amoebas. They're brain-eating amoebas. It sounds like a sci-fi movie. Right. I mean, I look at it and I go, look, I'm much more frightened in America than I am in Mexico in terms of crime.
So, Rick, so Ellen kind of sparked making people appreciate the gay movement. Good for her. I'd say Al Sharpton and a whole bevy of people who came before him were able to be the leaders of the African-American movement / community. There's no question Rush Limbaugh gets credit for starting the I am an angry man, get off my lawn, I'm white and I don't want anybody here movement, which was then followed by all the other guys who've, come after him, including some of the faces like Hannity and those that we see every day now on Fox News and all the people that we hear on the radio. So here I am thinking about all of these movements that have been started in the United States that had leaders. Why is it that we have not had one person come forward and be able to take us to the, at least, if not the promised land, an understanding land?
Well, I think one of the problems is in terms of Latino leadership, we are like Indian leaders, Indian tribes, indigenous. It's like we look and go, I can't order you to go fight for a cause. I can say, look at my example. Cesar Chavez was an example. He was he fasted. He believed in peace. He believed in education. I actually knew Cesar. Two of my cousins are married to his daughters.
Wow.
A saint. He told some pretty funny jokes too, but on the whole, an amazing man. They're not the leader that stands in front of the crowd that goes, you follow me, I'm the leader, follow me.
More Gandhi-esque, huh?
Yeah, to us, that's a dictator. So we've seen those types in Latin America and places like that where it's not about the society, it's about the family. That's why it's called a sphere of transference of power. Like Cuba, let's face it. Cuba, how long is Castro and his shadow has been in Cuba? There's no transference of power. I would probably respect Castro if he had transferred power. If you go, okay, you've now been elected. That's the one hallmark of democracy we can look at and go, if you fairly won the election, you will be the president. This is all that's going to happen.
So what happened to the Chavez family? I'm fascinated by what you just said. First of all, you knew him. Describe him for us.
He was a man that was deeply involved in organic farming. Like he would do, he saw how pesticides killed birds and literally were flying from the sky, the birds would die. He saw cancer clusters and things like that. So his issues tended to be, he would look and said, I have to convince the white middle-class person that, wait a minute, these fruits and vegetables are badly made. They're dangerous for you and they're dangerous for the people that work in those fields. He had a very simple agenda. And also his agenda was education. Very strongly about education. The work of the organization Field, Cesar Chavez's work continues by stressing education.
And what is his family? What is his family doing now?
Well, his family, like all families, some are very much socially involved and some aren't. And I'll tell you why. His life was a tough life. He didn't own a car. He didn't own anything. He basically really looked after the campesinos. And the people that worked in the fields. I remember he asked me to do comedy at one of his events. And so I came on stage and I'm like, I don't know how he's going to handle this. And so I go, So I'm so glad to be here and welcoming me, Cesar Chavez. What a fighter. What an amazing boxer. And I went, wait, he's the grape dude? No, wait a minute. I'm sorry. And he started laughing. And I knew he had a sense of humor. And I was up there with a celebrity dais with every celebrity you can imagine. And I looked for Cesar. I couldn't find him. I looked in the audience, and he was with every single campesino, the guys that worked in the field. He made every one of them feel like a king. He went to every table, talked to every single person. I saw truly, and I remember meeting Mr. Rogers, actually in Nantucket. I got to meet him and hang out with him. And I was the first person I would say felt like a saint, and the other one was Cesar Chavez. Huh. And he's not a saint that he wore a halo. He would tell a joke. I remember some of his jokes, pretty off-putting in some ways, because he was talking to campesinos. He knew how to talk to them.
So you're saying then, Rick, that the right person just has not come along.
What I'm saying is we have to look at it differently. There are people that are doing some amazing things. I mean, I know Eddie Olmos for years. He's the godfather to my children. I've seen him do amazing things. I've seen Danny Trejo. I had him on my show. He spoke to a group of. I literally drove with him to the show, and he was counseling someone who was having a drug problem. After the show, I was with him. He was counseling someone who had a drug problem. I've seen this man be a saint and be a counselor. So a lot of us are there and are trying their best. The standardized kind of Latino world. There's also Gary Acosta. He's from Najera, which is the real estate
Saul Trujillo.
People. Saul Trujillo. Look at these. I'm seeing people like I see what Gary Acosta is doing, because he's thinking about what's the financial future of Latinos.
Yeah, there are partners.
I see people,
Those are just named my two partners in this project. The three of us are the ones who are putting this whole Agua Media thing together, because we're convinced that essentially, if we depend on the general media to tell our stories, it's just never going to be told. So we've decided to do this because we're going to tell it ourselves.
And I'm really glad, because I support Gary Acosta. I've worked with him before. I see people like that are quietly moving the needle, and are trying their best. You cannot, in terms of Latinos affecting Hollywood and what their media portrayal is, it's only till you are in charge of your image do you really are in a position to say anything. And that's, with Aqua Media and what you guys are doing, it does help that, because it's an alternative voice. I definitely don't trust Fox News. Everyone knows that. But at times I look at CNN and I go, you're not doing us any good either. Yeah. I'd rather to say to you, you are falling behind. Look at the representation of Latinos just in the Writers Guild of America. It's pretty horrible. Our latest thing said we are treading water at least. That's about it. We're not demanding. Why isn't there more writers behind the camera?
Let me ask you, is that because they are, as we like to say, a tribe, a club? And that tribe, let's face it, is always going to be somewhat elitist. Maybe if we were there, we would do the same thing, and we would only hire each other. Maybe if we happen to be the ones in charge of the media decisions or any business, whatever it happens to be, and they happen to be Latinos instead of whatever it is. Maybe we would do the same thing.
Yeah, the crab story. And,
yes.
The very classic story we tell our children at night, the crab story. And I'm not going to...
No, I just told it before I went to you. Essentially, in fact, just before I introduced you, I essentially said that is what happened. Listen, to a certain extent, that happened to me. I mean, when CNN decided to back Lou Dobbs, and then they paid the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, and the National Association of Hispanic Journalists took the money, took $100,000 and said, okay, we'll put the racist dude who's going on TV on his show every day and saying Mexicans are a scourge and they're bringing diseases into the United States. We'll make that guy our keynote speaker. And the Latino who's going after him, who's also on CNN, he sits in the back of the room. And that's what they did to me. And that's a Latino organization, Rick.
There's only one true enemy to Latinos. It's, unfortunately, the other Latinos.
Yeah.
That's what does it. It's simple as Cortez did not come with 500 Spanish soldiers to wipe out 1 million Aztecs. He brought in 500 Spanish soldiers with hundreds of thousands of Native Americans, or natives of Mexico, who hated the Aztecs for various reasons. So we've never... we will always be conquered from within. And that's true of America too. It's what we have to do is when I sit there and I say, I'm going to do that extra step, I'm telling you the truth, I insist that Rick Sanchez speak. I insist on it. It's not a popular, thing to stand up and say this is the way, because a lot of those organizations, unfortunately, are rewarded by the same people they're criticizing. How many times do you go, I'm going to criticize ABC, NBC, or whatever, and then you're asking them to give you $10,000 for a table at your gala? I mean, basically, that is in itself corrupt. You go, well, I'm gonna criticize you, but tell you the truth. Also, could you give me $10,000 for a table?
Yeah, see, then that's the old conflict of interest thing. How can you be there to represent Latinos as their watchdog against the big media companies like CNN if you only survive because CNN writes you checks? Well, then you're really not you're not a check on CNN. You're
not. You're complicit with CNN, exactly. But you have to let the people that you're supposedly representing know that you're still speaking bad about CNN.
See, but maybe if they'd called me and said, Rick, look, between you and this guy, man, he's got you by $100,000. Maybe you can call Saul and maybe call your friend Rick Najera, and maybe you get Gary Acosta. You guys got a little dough. Maybe I'll tell you what, if you get close to $75,000, we'll make you the key. Maybe we just don't negotiate well.
Yeah, no, I look at Gary Acosta and I go, listen, he's a very smart man and a good guy, great wife and kids and all that sort of thing. But I understand he's a negotiator. He's a real estate man, and he will negotiate the better deal for Latinos. At the same time, we need Latinos screaming at their lungs, going, "What is going on?" They're caging children. They're doing all these different things. What is going on? And then another group like me going, we are the anyway, this may be Sanjeev Chopra. He goes,
Gupta?
Yeah, Sanjeev. Okay, I'm still talking to Rick Sanchez, but I'm gonna get on soon. All right. Okay, bye. That was Sanjeev Chopra from Ignite the Fire, Mastering Speaking and Writing.
Oh, how cool. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's funny because his brother's Deepak Chopra. He's Indian, and we both have kind of come up with this book about communication, Ignite the Fire Within. It's an Amazon bestseller, actually. It's good.
Nice.
Going up there. But reason we did it is just for this question. We need to
Let me say that
discussion.
one more time. Ignite the fire within. Master your speaking and your writing.
Yes.
Talk about leadership skills and communication skills and what we need to do as Latinos to get our message heard, which comes from here, el corazón, right?
Yes, it does. And it's a different way of thinking because in many ways, America needs us to also look in a different way. If you see a tribe of lions on the Serengeti, each one is pointed in a different direction, looking for enemies, looking for prey, looking for this different stuff. We need to look at America that way. We need each other to look in different directions and come up with different solutions and figure out shared solutions that benefit us all. I mean, if it comes down to it, if the religious right wants to talk about Jesus and his principles, what was his greatest commandment? To love your neighbor as yourself. Simple as that. So, and the Mayans call it in Lakesh, you are my other self. Those are ways of looking at other people and saying, I see you in me in you. If people that go to see plays are more likely to give to charity than any other group. Why is that? Because they start to develop compassion. We call this, and use the words of Dr. Sanjeev Chopra, mirror neurons. In other words, there was an experiment where a monkey got a peanut and every day got a peanut from the scientist. One day the scientist came in and ate the peanut himself. And the monkey, the same electrodes that decide to delight and good and all this thing happened, exploded in the monkey at the same time. In other words, the monkey was seeing himself, was as much pleasure in seeing the scientist get a peanut as himself. So now he started to see himself in the scientist. It is learning mirror neurons to learn to see one another in each other. And even in the words of Jesus, love your enemies.
I find myself doing that sometimes, oftentimes all of us look for that thing to do when we're tired. Sometimes I go into my my little TV room where I watch television and I go to YouTube video. And sometimes I find myself watching YouTube videos that make me angry. And then I have to stop and have a conversation with myself and say, why am I doing this? Why am I attracted to negative stimuli when I should be looking for stuff. So then I switch, and my wife will catch me, and she goes, aha, I saw yesterday you looked at 9 negative ones and only about 2 positive ones. What is it? So
it's built into our DNA as humans. This is the truth. They did a study, and they found out that we as humans will look at the negative before we look for the positive. The reason is the negative can kill you. So that's why we're constantly paranoid, going, hey, listen, if that snake with the rattle, don't touch him. Because what happened to the last guy who didn't do well. So we're constantly looking for the fear, the negative. It is our lower self, actually. But if you're looking for the higher self of talking about what poetry and art and all these things that hopefully move us toward, then we're thinking about philosophy. We're thinking about religion. We're thinking about the reason we're here. We're thinking about all these things and the solutions. But there is the negative side of us that will find the negative. You know, it's much easier to sell negative on the news than it is positive.
Of course.
And it's funny, if it leads, it bleeds. We all know that saying, you know, and that's the truth. But my wife watches this channel. It's called it was a travel network, and now seems to be called the Murder Channel. I don't know what happens. Yeah. They like start to change. Where it's fascinating to watch those shows with the detectives and the murders and stuff like that. That's not our higher self. Find that conversation that we can talk to people and hopefully move us closer together than apart. Look for ways to be the solution in the world, not the negative part of the world. Because negative is easy. I just turn on Ukraine, I turn on COVID, I turn on all these 1,000 things that are out there. But it's like, you know, my best friend growing up was very white. You know, he calls mom, ma, and pa. That's how white he was. Like, maybe our RFD every day in my neighborhood. And
it's funny you use that term because I'm trying to get away from the color thing. Saul and Gary and I had a conversation about that recently, and it's like if we can do nothing else, I would so much prefer that we referred to ourselves as Latinos or Latino Americans or Mexican American, or even define it down the ladder of abstraction, Mexican American who grew up in East LA, Cuban American who grew up in Hialeah, Florida, whatever. But I mean, the more info we give ourselves about ourselves, the better we understand ourselves. But we keep coming up with people of color. Yeah. It used to be offensive to say colored people, but now the media, especially the left, is saying, oh no, define yourself by color. Oh, and by the way, everybody gets to be everything except white. White gets to be the pristine, the smart, the kimosabi. The rest of you are brown, just like shit. And the other one is yellow. I think we should eliminate the whole color thing myself.
We can eliminate the whole color thing. But we can say that, but people are still going to see the color. They're going to go.
But I'm looking at you. You don't look brown to me, my friend, and I don't look brown. And I got Italian friends who are 5 shades darker than you, but they're white.
But that's the media telling you what a Latino should be. Are you a Luis Guzman Latino? Are you a Paul Rodriguez Latino? Are you Edward James Olmos Latino? Because they're not seeing all the shades of what Latino is. Right. I mean, it's funny. I feel bad for Lin-Manuel Miranda. He does a great film, In the Heights, and what's the biggest thing? There's not enough African Latinos in it, Afro Latinos, and it's like it's unfortunately what happens is we get all the trouble of the world we have to solve. We didn't solve the trouble. You didn't create the problem, but somehow when a Latino gets a chance to speak, that they have to figure every problem out and fix it. That is much harder on us as artists than any other group.
Well, I got to tell you, that's why. I don't know how you feel about this, but I don't co-opt this whole people of color thing. Because to me, people of color means that when you go to a giant corporation and you tell them, we've looked at you and you need to hire more people of color. And what they do, just by the definition of that term is, okay, we're going to hire 5 more people. 4 of them will be African Americans. And the last one will have to make a decision between an Asian and a Mexican or a Latino. And that's what people of color means. Now, I got to tell you, that's not fair because the statistics or the numbers are, we're 20% of the population. And African Americans, my buddies, our friends, they're 12% of the population. Good on them for getting the 4 jobs, and we got the other one. Not that we're depending on somebody to have to look at it that way. I'm just making the numerical argument. But for some reason, that's what people of color represents. I don't want to be in that little argument. I just look at me for who I am and what I can do.
Yeah, if you look at it that way, but there's the unique problem with Latinos. Some of us actually can blend. If I'm Rick Rick Rivers and you are, Rick Johnson.
Right.
No one will ever go and go, hey, wait a minute, where's your, donde está tu abuela? She's looking very.
Do you eat tacos?
That's a difference. We can really blend. And so in some ways as Latinos, we're forced to choose. And unfortunately, they don't give us so many categories to choose from. The truth is, I think Latinos have to have our own awakening to see all our differences and uniquenesses and see it as a thing. I look and when I did Latino Logs on Broadway, my cast was Renee Lavon, Cuban, Shirley Rumerick, Puerto Rican from Hell's Kitchen, me, Eugenio Derbez from Mexico. We were the coalition of what Latino is, and I accepted it.
I'm looking at my crew right now. We got over here, Jerry is Mexican, Luis is from Venezuela. What is our director is Colombian. Yeah, sorry, George. But
look how that is a
Venezuelan. Our whole team is. And by the way, when we sit down and we hang out and we chat or we talk about shows, there's not a spit of difference between us. We're whether we're speaking in English or in Spanish or in between, like we often do.
Of course not.
This whole theory that we're all so different that we'll never come together is just bullshit. We've got a lot more in common than most Americans have in common.
We have so much more in common. I look at it, I go, look, when I'm in Miami, I do little corderitos, those little coffee shots.
Yeah.
When you're on Univision.
Well, we call it cocaine.
Yeah, cocaine. Yeah, basically the Colombian non-cocaine one, the actual coffee one. But I love that. I had a Cuban Senate, Medianoche.
Right.
Love Medianoche. I love lechon, black beans. I go, it doesn't mean I don't love, salsa, huitlacoche, tamales, all that stuff. We are acquiring more of us. We're becoming more of us by having other Latinos with their traditions.
And by the way, man, it's hell. I mean, it's no different than when you go to Savannah. You're going to find people eating a lot of strange foods that people from the Bronx would never touch. And people from the Bronx would never eat the stuff that they eat in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So, we come from different cultures. We pronounce certain words different ways. Yeah. And guess what? So do Americans.
It makes us, listen, if Shakespeare had a working vocabulary, something like 36,000 words. And most average Americans have a working vocabulary of 12,000 words. It just means he had more of a vocabulary.
Yeah.
As we culturally become savvy with other cultures and groups, we develop more of a cultural vocabulary. I happen to like ramen. I love ramen. Discovered ramen.
Yeah.
Now, 25 years ago, I'd never had sushi. I've had sushi. Our taste changed. It's called cultural evolution. It's who we grow as a people. The Persians during the time of Xerxes is not the Persians of today. We're always growing and changing. And if you don't embrace change and see change as a good thing, then you'll be left behind.
You'll
be Kodak.
Here's a footnote to end on, I think, which I find fascinating, which I just learned recently. The condiment that was the best-selling in the United States for the longest time was ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, and today, by far, it is salsa.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up, like I said, it was my best friend, Nicky Witt at the time. He used to bring, every Friday I'd go over for dinner, they have tacos. And I said, wow. Every Friday, by the fifth Friday, I said, man, you guys love tacos. And they said, we don't love tacos. We thought you'd be more comfortable having tacos. But you know something? I sat there and I said, there's two ways I could take it. You prejudiced, ignorant bastards. Right. Or, wow, they went out of their way to make me feel good.
I agree with that.
And that's the way you have to look at it. It's like, look, sometimes we can be too woke. We can be too angry. We can be those things. In the end, you're on a bus, you're in a subway in New York. You got to get along. You got to talk to people.
Not to beat up, once again, I'm sorry, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, but I think they're morons in many ways for what they did to me. But they're the ones who were complaining because the First Lady yesterday went to Texas, and she screwed up. She shouldn't have used the word taco. But you know what? Man, come on, give her a break. She's dumb and all that because she also couldn't pronounce the word bodega. But you know what? If that's where you're going to hang your hat, if that's where you're going to go, if that's the biggest thing that we as Latinos are going to get mad about because somebody used the word taco when referring to us, shut the fuck up, right? I mean, I'm sorry. God, that's woke. That's over woke, I think.
Of course it's over woke. I mean, look, there's things you go, we've many times in America where Americans have learned to love each other and get along. You know what's been? The Army. My father, when he went to World War II, he told me stories. He said, I saw these hillbillies coming with no belts. I saw, all these different people. And what united us once we were in war, we're all American.
Right.
And he remembered that. And I remember that story too. My uncle died in World War II. My father fought in World War II. He fought in Vietnam. He was in Vietnam as well. So we're very patriotic people. And we're looking for ways to reach across the aisle and talk to one another in a respectful manner and listen to each other. And we're going to have these hard conversations. And the hard conversations, you have to be adult enough to listen to them. You have to be adult enough when you go to a comedy club that might say something that will offend you. And half the time they'll say something that will make you laugh. 90% of the time they'll make you laugh. And maybe 10% they might offend you. But that's the nature of being in that comedy club. That's the nature of wearing your big boy pants and big women pants and being in that club and hearing what people have to say. Sometimes it will anger you and sometimes it won't, but you're an adult in that situation. So I think those are hard questions I love to talk about because I know there's solutions. Even this, we'll leave on critical race theory, but we'll talk about something else. But we can talk about a million things. These are the conversations we need to have. So congratulations on what you guys are doing. I didn't know Gary was part of this. So that's good. I'm glad he is.
We were just on the phone with him a little earlier. So yeah, that's great.
Good
Gary
guy.
Acosta,
Good guy.
Saul Trujillo, Rick Sanchez, and now Rick Najera, a legendary part of the Three Amigos that we're forming here. Thanks, Rick. You're a great guy. I don't give a shit how the hell you pronounce your name. The book is called or mine for that matter. The book is called Ignite Fire. Master your speaking and your writing. Thanks, amigo.
Thank you, Rick. Good talking to you.
That's a really great conversation we just had with Rick. And this is important, these conversations, because these are Latino realities, and we're going to be the only ones doing that right here on Agua Media. This is Rick Sanchez News. You could look for us as a podcast by just clicking right down there where it says watch more, and we'll take you to a place where you could choose where you want to watch it. Maybe you want to choose Spotify, maybe you want to choose Apple, or maybe wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, then please, por favor, we need you. Subscribe. Dale.
Agua.